Good morning, everyone. Hi. Good to have you here at DevOps Days Tel Aviv. Thank you very much. So today we're going to talk about the story of one engineering group in Melio, the story behind how we scaled from one engineer to 40. And basically, I'm going to share some practical tools that we used to make it happen, but it's more than that. It's about how with having the right vision and how with mapping the gaps between where you want to be and where you are now, how with the right research and planning accordingly, you can achieve all this. I call it dream big and plan accordingly. So, I'm Gad Salner. For the past 20 years, I've been part of the Israeli tech scene. Once the clicker will work, that would be great. And also in the past 20 days, let me just use this one instead. And in the past 20 days, also part of the artificial intelligence. I like playing with it. So basically, in the part of the tech scene, I've been mostly in startups, big and small, engineer and manager. And in the past two workplaces where influenced me most were WeWork and Melio. There where I doubled down on management. And also, I am co-founder of Kaduregel Shefel, which is an Israeli art project covering Israel diverse society through the prism of lower league football. For example, from the right-left side, you see the Kinneret and Yerucham. And this project is become also an exhibition around the world, talks, pop-up stores. And I'm very proud of this project because at the beginning when we started it, we only had a vision. We didn't know anything about photography. We didn't know anything about art production. We didn't know anything about so many things about this world because we come from tech. But then when I read a book called Why Decisions Failed, it made perfect sense to me. Because the number you see now on the screen is the increased chance of your project to succeed if you deep dive enough and research enough to have two alternatives and not only one. And this helped us a lot during when we worked on Kaduregel Shefel. I see there was also followers. אני אדבר לאט יותר בשבילכם, סתם. Basically, we're going to talk about team scaling. So it's a completely different set of challenges. And I'm going to visualize it with my friend, with the help of my friend, Dima. I worked with Dima a couple of years ago. I met him 20 years ago. I really wished he could be with us today. I mean, he's alive, sorry. He's super alive. I met him yesterday. But we're going to talk about three different phases of our engineering group. The first phase is when we were a small squad. The second phase, the most important one, is when we became several squads and several groups. And the last one is when we became several groups and on. So let me take you back in time to April 2020. April 2020 for most of us was the beginning of COVID, the global pandemic, anxieties. But for me, it was also the beginning of a new work at Melio. So it was basically only me and Dima for a couple of months, not seeing anyone. And then after a couple of months, when we met, we realized that Melio is going to be something very big. It's not only going to be something very big, but it's on us to make it happen. So what we did as a group, and this is something that will repeat itself, we together asked ourselves a very high-level question, but also a very basic one. What makes a group of people like a kickass team? And we decided to do something like this. We decided first to understand the basic of what makes a team work, what domains, what high-level domains makes a team. Then we started to break down the different building blocks of these domains. And the next step was to try to understand what are the gaps between each and every domain and bricks between where we are and where we want to be. And then the most important thing We wanted to have a holistic approach of addressing all the challenges, not just patch up something, but to have a holistic approach because we wanted to be the best. So the domains that we defined is high-level team, what makes a group of individuals with different aspirations, motivations, to a single, cohesive, communicating team. The second one was delivery. How can we make sure that once we have a good, cohesive team, that they deliver with quality, that they are very transparent, they have high velocity? And once you have a good, cohesive team that delivers well, how can we make sure that they grow from their experience? How can we make sure that they still have this growth set of mind that will keep the team grow? And for each and every one, we started to break down into different parameters because we wanted to understand and address and create processes for each and every one of them. So for example, team, okay, so we want to make sure that everyone feels that it makes an impact. We want to make sure that all engineers are engaged. We want to make sure that they have a good, solid culture that sticks them together. And for delivery, we thought, okay, so we need to make sure that the engineers are accountable for it. We need to make sure that they have high quality, velocity, testing. And later on, we need to make sure that they are continue to grow, because engineers that don't have enough, they are not challenged or don't have a place to grow will churn. So we thought about it as a feed-forward cycle, that once you have a team that delivers well, that grows from the experience, how can we make sure that the team will be even more cohesive, delivers more well, and grows from this experience? And next on, we did a SWOT analysis. For those who don't know what SWOT analysis is, it's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And in Melio, we shared mostly the same challenges that most startups has, right? As strengths, we were a very good, solid team, top-notch engineers. We were very close to each other. Weaknesses, we were very small and fragile. And the opportunities were, of course, endless, because we had a lot of work to do. The company was going well. But the threats that we shared were two major threats. One is the hypergrowth that we are experiencing. And the second one that we all gladly forgot about is the pandemic. So both of them will probably impact both the onboarding, the culture, the engagement, everything, motivation. And once we understood we mapped where we want to be and what are the challenges, we started to address each and every one of the bricks that we talked about. So this means, and this is just, I'm going to just on purpose cherry pick only the very, very small action items, just to let you lay the notion of how deep dive did we get to make sure that everything is addressed. So for example, for a team, when we were only a small team with no office, we did one-on-ones at parks and gardens. And for delivery, we made sure that any feature is worked by two people to make sure that no one is left behind. And when someone is down, the second person will help him. And for growth, we made sure that everyone is signed up for different learning resources, and we gave them the platform to share their learnings with different engineers. And gladly, not only it worked, but we thrived from the opportunity. And once we realized this actually worked, it's more than the action items itself, because these are just very small examples. But the understanding that we have of this conceptual infrastructure for empowering engineers to work together and make sure that we don't miss a thing as a holistic approach helped us a lot to the next leap in our group. And by the next leap in our group, I mean a year. A year later, we doubled in size. We became already something like 15 engineers, 20. And we realized that Melio is not stopping. It still hypergrows. It's still going to jump. And we need to make sure that what helped us during the first phase will also help us during the next phase. And what helps us is, again, mapping, understanding where we want to be, and the challenges are completely different when we're talking about a squad and group. So what we did next is started to map the entire engineering domains that are critical, both technical and cultural. So for example, these probably some domains that we all know, like more technical, like testing and monitoring, and some are more cultural, like onboarding and knowledge sharing. And we wanted to visualize it as to make sure that we understand where are we at. So for example, this is let's take this as an example, radar diagram. And this company, for example, is great at testing, it delivers well, and it's great monitoring coverage, but its onboarding is clunky, its engagement is low. And this means that in a couple of months, people that are not feeling engaged will probably leave, and people that are not onboarded well will probably take a lot of time from senior engineers. So some people see this as a problem, but we saw it as an opportunity to unleash, to make sure that we achieve this and fulfill this potential, because if we'll double down on onboarding and engagement, will be awesome. And what we did then is we started to consider different approaches for scaling teams. So one approach, which we all know is in startups, is stale, which means we have a lot of work, we don't have time for this, let's just deliver. And in time, people will leave, because if we neglect dev experience and onboarding and velocity, people will feel it immediately. Another approach is top-down, because we, like managers, we know everything, of course, and we can tell everyone how testing should look like and onboarding, and we know everything, right? No. And this means that with time, people will probably feel left out, and we don't have the buy-in of the engineers. And another option is domain-specific. Domain-specific means we don't have enough time, but let's double down on testing. And again, we'll lose a lot of other domains. And we wanted to find a way to make sure that we achieve progress in all domains a year from now. And we thought of an engineering-led approach. And what we did is we created a framework for engineers to empower them and lead the change by collaborating with different managers and creating task forces around each and every domain that they are passionate about and they want to lead and own. And this is something that we considered in several steps. As always, first step is analyze. As I mentioned before, it's not the same when you have one squad and several groups or several squads. The understanding that you need to onboard the 30th people or the 40th people, and understanding that the 20th people that is going to join has to be the best dev experience, is a completely different set of challenges, both technical and cultural. So what we did next is, once we mapped all the domains that we wanted to address, we did something like this. We as managers created one-pagers for each and every one domain, and concluded off problem statement, a very high-level problem statement for each and every one of them, the current status, and goals where we want to be a year from now. And once we achieved that, we understood where are we at and where we need to double down. And the next step was probably the scariest. And this one was assign these domains to engineers, because we all know that engineers are very cynical people. And when we wanted to hand it out, the one-pagers that we actually printed to engineers, I thought, okay, people are going to say, what do they want from us? This is a waste of time. But once we handed them out to the engineers, we got amazing reactions, because suddenly you understood that people found their passion, where they can fulfill their true potential. Either it's technical or even more cultural. And people actually asked me in the night later, I wonder if I want to lead the onboarding experience or I want to lead the dev experience. And people started to own different domains. And what we did next is we paired them with managers, and not their own managers, But on purpose, we mixed them with managers from different squads because we wanted to make sure that going forward, when now we were 15, but when we were 40, and the group will be large enough, that managers and engineers from all across the group will be very, very close to each other and working with each other and mentor each other with different styles. And once we assigned it, we gave them time to research. And the research concluded of a few steps. First step was internal research for each and every domain. And when we wanted to understand, for example, how testing works in the company, so okay, let's fully understand and map. The second part was external research. We asked them to go and talk with different companies, with different VPs, and ask, how is the onboarding in your company? How is the testing in your company? Because A, we wanted to understand how different companies work, and B, we wanted to empower engineers and network and work on their soft skills, because this is super important. I think many of the people that are here today, not only understanding and learning, but want also to network. And network with different managers and different C-levels from different companies is not an opportunity that you get from your day-to-day work. And once we understood what are the domains and we knew who owns each domain and understood what we want to do, we started to plan. And we asked every engineer in the team and every task force that we created to build like a very good, thorough plan of a North Star. Once we have a North Star, we want a timeline. What do we want to expect by Q1, by Q2? We wanted them to define OKRs for each and every one of them. For example, testing OKRs are pretty much easy because some of them are like coverage and how many P0s do we have. But how do you give an OKR for something soft like onboarding or knowledge sharing? But the good thing and the nice thing, it was a good opportunity for engineers, both junior and senior, to start owning and planning a yearly plan to impact the entire group. And once you have plans for each and every one domain, you suddenly see that how these entire domains grow from the passion that people own, and they have their accountability and buy-in. And once they have the North Star and the timeline and the OKRs, we ask them, okay, what do you need in terms of resources? Do you need the budget to buy tools? Do you need budget in terms of time in the next quarter? Do you want time in the week to understand and implement what you wanted to achieve? And this worked very well in terms of planning. And not only that, but once people researched and planned, we asked them to share everything with the entire group, with the entire other task forces. Because once we did this, we saw that the people that learned about testing, once they shared it with the entire group, and they shared it from the bottom of their heart, people listen. Even though not all people grew from this experience and only half of the people grew from this experience, it's something very big. And once you multiply it with the entire domains, you multiply it by 8, you can understand how many people learn from different experiences and different plannings. And this is another side effect of this framework. And last but not least is obviously delivery. So this one was relatively and surprisingly easy because once it was thoroughly researched, thoroughly planned, and we had everyone's buy-in, we knew how to make sure that everyone is on track. We made sure that everyone is delivering, and we made sure that everyone is motivated to make sure that it happens. And with time, this is something that we understood is very, very helpful. So once we analyzed, assigned it to people, researched, planned, shared, and delivered, we were on the track to be something very, very big, and we achieved it. And a year go by, and we became not only a couple of squads, but a couple of groups. And this is another completely different set of challenges. And what we did then is, again, we started to understand how groups work and what didn't work on our task forces. And what we found out is that our different task forces were not fully optimized because they were relatively siloed. For example, testing was something siloed from onboarding, and onboarding was siloed from dev experience. And once we found out that this is something that is a challenge for us, we thought, okay, we need to make sure that the task forces are data-driven, and we might want to make sure that the task forces are relying on a good, solid tech leadership framework. And what does that mean? So let's take, for example, testing. Testing is one of the basic infrastructure of any successful team. And testing influences the onboarding because we want to make sure that any new person that onboards is as cares about testing as everyone else. We want to make sure that it's easy implemented so it affects dev experience. And it should definitely be part of the dev cycle. But testing itself is also influenced by different other domains like monitoring. So what we did is we started to look and redefine every domain as a module that gets input and gets output. For example, testing gets inputs from the code base, from research, from different incidents, but it also affects different task forces like onboarding, dev cycle, developer experience. So we asked each and every task force to create a contract and defines specifically which inputs do we want to get, which inputs it should be output. And once we had that, we need to make sure that everyone is aligned. Because if you can see by this graph, we had a lot of modules talking with each other. And for this, we had a tech leadership framework. And the tech leadership framework is a framework that we created that made sure that every tech lead in each squad will be an ambassador for receiving and making sure that the input and output are aligned. For example, if something new is happening in testing, we made sure that it's rolled out not only via talks and emails, but also through the tech leader, which is part of the team, and etc. And once we started to sort things out, everything was on track. And what's next? What's next is basically this talk, as I mentioned in the beginning, is about not only but also about the understanding of mapping the gaps, having the right vision, creating tools, research, and empowering engineers. And this is something that anyone in this room could take to his back into his work and manifest it in every way that you think of. And I wanted to say thank you to everyone. It's been a pleasure to be here. And see you around if you want me. I'm on Twitter, LinkedIn, etc. And thanks everyone. Thanks you very much.